Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising books, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, new release, The Joy of Cruising Again, as well as other fun, informative global cruise personalities. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests. If you hear about a cruise that interests you, book it at www.thejoyoфvacation.com or enter to win a free cruise for two. Again, www.thejoyoфvacation.com. We really appreciate your feedback, so leave us a text. Paul can't reply, but he may read your text on the air.
Hey, I want to shout out Keisha H. from Greensboro, North Carolina, who sent me a text. I love this episode with Miss Cheryl, Sig Cruiser. She has definitely been a big inspiration to my cruising experience, and I have both of her books as well. Thanks for a great interview. Stay blessed. Thank you, Keisha. Hello, passionate cruisers. This is Paul, and this week on the Joy of Cruising podcast, I am delighted to welcome J.D. Harbour, author of the new seafaring novels Emerald Tide and Sapphire Seas. They are both set aboard a luxurious cruise ship and were inspired by JD's own experience. You see, he met his wife on board a singles cruise in 2014, and they have sailed together ever since. Man, that sounds fun. As JD notes, meeting my wife on that cruise is proof that the magic of the sea really can lead to unexpected connections. JD Harbour is an author and longtime cruise enthusiast. His own love story started on board the Carnival Sunshine, and it's been a huge inspiration in his writing. He says, there's something about being at sea that allows people to leave behind the stresses of life and open themselves up to adventure and possibility. That's the energy I wanted to capture in my novels, pairing romance with personal growth against the dreamy backdrop of the open sea. JD's debut novels, Emerald Tide and Sapphire Seas, are two interconnected stories following Aidan Murphy and Harper Brooks, who meet on board the Elysian Serenade during a hosted group voyage for single sailors. The two books explore themes of self-discovery, second chances, and how love can flourish when we allow ourselves to embrace change and vulnerability. Cruising provides such a unique and romantic backdrop. It's a world where we can truly leave everything behind and focus on the moment. There's a special kind of magic on board a cruise ship that brings people together in ways they don't expect. And JD tried to infuse that same feeling into these stories. The books are the beginning of a series, Romantasy Serenades, with each installment exploring the new characters and love stories, all tied together by the romance and adventure found at sea. It's a project JD is deeply passionate about. Welcome, JD, to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a nice sunny day down here. Just kind of hanging out, getting ready for getting ready for the weekend. So,
I'll bet you're doing great. I just received some breaking news, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Before we talk about your book, tell our listeners about yourself. Where you're from, where you live. How'd you get from point A to point B, your background, family, anything you would like to share, JD?
Absolutely. So I'm originally from Utah. However, I now live in the Orlando area with my wife, two teenagers, and our puppy, a border collie who's got way too much energy for me. Directly after high school, I joined the military as a photojournalist, and that's kind of where my joy and passion for storytelling kind of took hold. I really enjoyed meeting my fellow comrades and sharing the stories of the great things that my brothers and sisters in the military were doing. And then it kind of just grew from there. And then after I left the military, we moved down here to Florida. We moved here to be closer to my wife's family, and we've been loving it ever since.
Well, we've got a couple of things in common. I spent some time. What branch were you in?
I was in the Army.
Okay, yeah, same here. I was in the Army. I lived in Florida for a while, although I lived on the opposite coast from you. I lived on the West Coast in Fort Myers. Spent 9 years there, and I also am a writer. So we got a lot in common. I couldn't wait to ask you about the singles cruise. I love theme cruises. I think I can safely surmise that only a small percentage of us have experienced such a cruise. So tell us all about it.
So absolutely, the singles cruise that I went on, it was I at the time that I went on my first singles cruise, I was a young single parent, didn't have a whole lot of opportunities to travel. It was difficult for me to travel with just me and my kids, and it was difficult trying to convince family to travel along with me as well. But I really loved cruising. I really wanted to do it. And then after one of my deployments, my military deployments, I wanted to take an opportunity to just kind of escape while my kids were still staying with my parents to finish out the school year. And I came across a singles cruise tour provider, and their whole mission was, sail solo but never alone. They were not advertising it as a hookup cruise or a sex cruise. It was literally just people of a common theme coming together and cruising together.
Mm-hmm.
So I went on one of those. I really enjoyed it. And then a couple years later, I was getting ready for yet another military deployment, and the kids were back with my parents while I was getting ready to walk out the door, and saw an opportunity to take one more of these singles cruises before I left, and turned out that wound up meeting my wife on that ship, the Carnival Sunshine.
What was the first one? I missed that. Maybe you said it, but I missed that.
The first one was on the Carnival Liberty.
Now, were they both put on by the same theme cruise company, or was it something Carnival did?
It was put on by the same company.
Okay.
There are a few of them out there. The one that I had toured with is actually singlescruise.com.
Singles cruise. Okay. And they're still operating?
They are still operating. I have not sailed on a singles cruise since meeting my wife, for some obvious reasons, but they're still out there, and I still have a lot of friends who travel on those cruises, and they have a lot of fun.
Well, something tells me that the singlescruise.com URL is getting ready to get some new visitors.
Absolutely. I had a blast, and anybody else who, if they were to ask me whether or not they should do it, I would 100% say yes.
So you met your future wife on the second one. I take it that was her first experience on singlecruise.com?
So yes, that was her first time on a singles cruise. And she was actually on there because her sister's friend was a manager with Singles Cruise.
Okay.
So she had been encouraging my wife for many years, go, go, go. And she finally decided to give it a try. And fate would have it that we were both on the same ship.
Let me sheepishly ask you, was it love at first sight? How far were you into the cruise before you met your future bride?
So we met on, well, technically they had a pre-cruise cocktail party at the hotel the night before we left.
Uh-huh.
And I did meet her there. And then we boarded the ship the next day, and we just kind of kept hanging out, kept running into each other. It was not a full ship of singles passengers. It was a group of about 200 of us. So a sizable group, but it was not the full ship. And then, just over the course of that week, we just hung out. We spent a little bit more time together as the week progressed. We wound up taking our first date in Grand Turk. Is and we went paddleboarding.
Mm-hmm.
So that is, I always say every time we go back to Grand Turk, we're returning back to where our first date was.
It sounds like such a romantic story. And as a writer myself, I'm not surprised at all that it prompted you. I mean, what's the beginning? That not necessarily that exactly prompted you, but that was sort of the a theme in your writing. I often find myself over the years in situations and say to myself, there's a book. There's a book here. so circumstances often drive prospective authors to put pen to paper, so to speak.
Absolutely. Oh, I was just going to add to that not only did I meet my wife on that singles cruise, but we know at least 4 other couples that we're friends with who also met on a singles cruise, and we've come across other people just in our sailing that have said that they met on a singles cruise. On our most recent cruise over Christmas, we were just hanging out at the pool, talking to a couple, and then they kind of brought up a shared acquaintance that we have, and turned out that they met on a singles cruise 1 year before my wife and I did. So we're consistently meeting people who have met in a similar fashion to what we have.
Very romantic story, and clearly laid the groundwork for your future writing, and we'll come back to that. But let me shift gears a little bit. I always ask guests to share with my listeners who range from cruisers with dozens of cruises to people aspiring to take their first cruise. I always ask my guests to talk about their cruise history. Give us some highlights of your cruising life. Talk about your very first cruise.
Okay. So I have cruised 23 times so far. With our most recent trip was this past Christmas, where we celebrated my wife's 50th birthday. Oops, I mean her second 25th birthday. I don't want to get in trouble. Yes. But I always try to have at least 2 or 3 cruises already on the books for future sailings. I currently have 2 on my schedule right now, and always looking forward to it. I've sailed with several of the cruise lines: Carnival, Royal Caribbean, MSC, Disney, Margaritaville, Norwegian, Virgin Voyages. So I've been around, tried a lot of different things, and I've loved it.
Now, was that first singles cruise? You might have mentioned this and I missed it. Was that your first cruise?
No, my first cruise. This is a funny story, actually. My first cruise was with my parents took me my sophomore year of high school. I was a grumpy, unimpressed teenager, pissed off that I did not want to be on that boat. I wanted to be going out riding roller coasters instead. So I have a boarding photo from our boarding day where my parents, my siblings, everybody is super excited to be getting on this ship, going on vacation. And me, the grumpy teenager, slouching off to the side, refusing to smile, just did not want to be there at all. However, by the end of that week, I was hooked on cruising. Saltwater was in my veins, and that was going to be me for the rest of my traveling days.
So how long was it before you cruised again?
I want to say it was about 2 years after that. I believe it was shortly before I graduated high school, kind of as a graduation gift from my grandparents. And at that point, I knew I was already joining the military and stuff, so they wanted to kind of give me one last vacation before I graduated and then shipped away.
So I don't suspect that second cruise you were a grumpy teenager. That you had recollections from that first one, and sounds like you were probably all in.
I was, and you know what? It was not the activities on board. It was not the food, the locations, anything like that that really hooked me. It was the people that I met. I got to go to the teens club on that first cruise and meet some people from all across the U.S. I'm not afraid to say that growing up in Utah, I lived a very sheltered life. I did not have a very diverse group of friends growing up, but being on those cruises, meeting people, getting to hear other people's stories about where they came from, who they are, what they do, and all that, really opened my eyes to a whole new world outside of my small community growing up. And I would say it even helped inspire me to join the military and go other places and see new people, meet, and all of that as well.
Now you mentioned that you have gone on a fairly diverse array of cruise lines. So of those lines, I like them all. Do you have a favorite?
I can't really say that I have a favorite of them all. I would say, even the worst day on a cruise ship is still a better day than what being in the office. Um,
Sure.
so, every cruise that I've been on, I've had a great time. I've enjoyed the experience. I've enjoyed the people that I've met, the staff, crew, other passengers has always been fantastic. Um, every every cruise line has something great that they do. They might not all do everything great. They may have some areas where they can improve, but overall, e- every cruise that I've been on, I can always find something that was fantastic.
Hmm. Hmm.
As of right now, I'd probably say Carnival is the line that we've cruised the most, especially as of recent. Um, but that's mostly due to, my teenagers are getting up there in age, and we need two cabins anytime we go. Um, and honestly, Carnival is the most affordable to be able to do those two cabins. I will say that I do have a favorite class of ships. The Vista class on Carnival is our current favorite, and that is primarily because of the Havana areas that they have on those
Oh
ships.
yeah.
Even we were on the Horizon for Christmas, completely packed ship, sold to capacity. But we stayed in the Havana, and it was like our own private little retreat on the ship, and it was fabulous.
Was that your? That was just this past Christmas.
Yes, just a couple months ago, this past Christmas.
Was that your first Christmas on a cruise?
It was not. Actually, one shortly after COVID, when everybody was getting back up, uh, we took a that was we took a Christmas cruise then, and we kind of got hooked to sailing on the holidays.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I love Christmas.
yes, the, it, there's something special about celebrating the holidays at sea.
So let's talk about Emerald Tide and Sapphire Seas. As I said, I am also an author. So having been where you are right now, I am sure this is a very exciting time for you. Congratulations on your debut novels, Emerald Tide and Sapphire Sea. When will the books be released?
So the books were released on March 31st, and they're available pretty much anywhere you already buy books.
Too early then to ask how it's going. I guess you can pre-order
You,
or not really.
you can pre-order. I know by the time that this episode airs, they will be released and live. So I have had a few people who've been able to review the books and provide some feedback to me. And the comments that I've gotten back have all been very positive.
Now, curiosity question. So no judgment. I'm just intrigued about why you felt these two stories, Emerald Tide and Sapphire Seas, needed to be told simultaneously rather than as a single novel.
Absolutely. So a traditional romance novel with dual perspectives is traditionally put into one book where it flops back and forth between the two love interests' perspectives. I actually began my writing journey right as a retelling of my wife and I's story. And I was writing in that traditional dual perspective style where it was jumping back and forth every chapter. And I was just really getting frustrated with trying to fit my writing into that style. So I kind of pushed that story off to the side and decided to try a new approach. And that's when I began writing Emerald Tide and Sapphire Seas. And I really brought it from a standpoint of the main character in each of these stories have their own story to tell. You know, when you when you have a relationship with another individual, their story is just as much important to the overall love story as their partners. So I really wanted to make sure I gave each of the main characters their own space to share their story.
So it sounds like you started as a single book. You made a change. So since you essentially tell the same love story, but from two different perspectives, touch on how you keep each book feeling fresh and unique while still delivering, a cohesive romance.
Well, that's one of the biggest challenges and one of the most exciting things for me as a writer, actually. Um, but Paul, think about when you and Cheryl first met and when you guys started dating. You know, if I asked you both separately to tell the story of your relationship, you might have a lot of the same key events that you talked about. Your first date, your where you guys got engaged, or any of these type of little pivotal times. However, since you are two different people, you might focus on very different details in those stories. So I kind of come at it from that way. In my, for example, I'll give one example from my books. They have one scene where the two main characters visit an art gallery on board the ship. Harper, who's the female main character, she is very artistically inclined by nature, and she is drawn and emotionally moved by the art that she experiences in this art gallery. Aiden, on the other hand, the male main character in these stories, he is not as drawn to the art itself. However, he is uh, deeply moved and to watching Harper's emotional connection to the art as they tour this gallery. So it provides opportunities for different emotions from the characters, different interpretations of the scenes that are playing out. And that's where we get the two separate stories.
That's interesting. You asked me, you gave an analogy or an example of if you ask me to talk about something and then you ask, Cheryl, my wife to talk about something. Let me ask a question. Talk about your wife's impression of the two books, the two intertwined stories.
So my wife actually was obviously the first person to read my stories, and she read the story that I worked on prior to Emerald Tide and Sapphire Seas, and she, she followed it. She kind of understood where I was going the first time. We're jumping back and forth between perspectives. But then once she saw that I had switched it up for these new books and was giving each character their own story to tell, she felt like there was a deeper connection to the individual characters, a deeper understanding of everywhere that they had been and what they were looking for out of the romance and their life, that it really helped give them a much fuller story.
Now, you obviously kind of already, you know, I'm sure the single cruise was the origin, but say some more about how your own experiences influenced the books, and specifically how cruising shaped your journey as a writer.
Absolutely. So, of course, my own singles cruise experience is a huge inspiration, um, both between meeting my wife on board, um, and meeting others who have similarly met their significant others on board as well, has really opened up my eyes and kind of solidified my belief that love can often be found in very unexpected places, and that's where I bring my stories from. Um, and then cruising itself, it's a very romantic setting for romance. It's a um, there's something about really disconnecting from the real world that gives you the opportunity to learn and discover more about yourself and others without any distractions. When you're on a cruise ship, you can turn off your cell phone, you can disconnect from work. You don't have to worry about any outside influence pulling your time away from really meeting somebody and learning about that other individual.
Suppose on March 31st, I order or I receive my order of Emerald Tide and Sapphire Seas. Okay,
Yes.
which ones do I read first?
So the great thing about these books, I'm releasing them in pairs, and even throughout my Romantasy Serenade series, they're going to continue to be released as pairs. But I've written them to where you can start either order. If you want to start with his perspective, you can start with Emerald Tide. If you want to start with her perspective, you can pick up Sapphire Seas first. And it's kind of a choose your own path or choose your own destiny story. Um, I've also, from one reviewer, said that they read one chapter of each at a time, so they kind of read them both concurrently. Uh,
You just kind of read my mind because I was just getting ready to ask, or not ask, but state that I suspect more than a few readers are going to jump back and forth.
Yeah, and they're more than welcome to do that. That's one of the great things that I like about writing the companion novels is it gives the reader the opportunity to learn and discover these stories as they wish.
So you kind of just answered this question, but I was going to ask what can readers expect from the stories?
So at their core, these stories are about self-discovery, second chance, and taking risks in both life and love. Um, yes, these are very much a romance story, but uh, Aiden and Harper, before they can really fall in love with each other, they both have their own personal journeys that they need to navigate first. They can expect a strong family dynamic with in Emerald Tide, where Aiden is a chef at his family's restaurant, and then Harper is a marketing executive in New York City who had reached the point where she had achieved the dreams that she thought that she wanted, but she's got to but now she's at a point in this book where she's got to decide, is that truly what she wants? And of course, the love of cruising is fully on display. They meet on board the Elysian Serenade, which is a fictional cruise ship that I've developed for this series. And even though they meet on the cruise ship and they spend a lot of time to get to know each other, their story doesn't end there. After the cruise is over, then they have to figure out what's next. They don't live in the same place. They're not from the same circles. Do they continue on with their romance that started on board? Do they, or something else happen? That's what readers will get to discover.
Speaking of what's next, you just alluded to Romantic Serenade series, and I think I mentioned in the intro that these books are the beginning of a series. So talk about that. What's coming next in Romantic Serenade series? I suspect you already have started on the next pair. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, I have a full 15 book overarching plan in place for the Romantic Sea Serenades, and each story will come out in pairs. With I had something special planned for book number 15, so that one will not be a pair. But we have a ways to go before we get to that one. Yeah, so each couple will have their own pair of books going through the series. I have already started working on the next two pairs, actually. But the next one that will be coming out, I'm going to return back to that original story that I alluded to, the retelling of my wife and I's love story. And that will be the next one.
So earlier in our conversation, we just touched on theme cruising. Your singles cruise was a theme cruise, and I mentioned how much I love theme cruising, and you said it. I don't remember your exact words, but it's the great thing about theme cruises is that everyone is there for the same reason. Besides, cruising, they're there for whatever the theme is. Whether the theme is, just being single. I've heard of religious-oriented cruises. I've heard of. I just got back from the Soul Train cruise. If you watched Soul Train growing up, you can imagine what that was like. I've been on the Smooth Jazz cruise. So while theme cruising is sort of on our minds, on my mind, I just got some amazing breaking news about author J.D. Harmer, and tell us about that, which is very exciting. I envy you. I wish I could be in your position. Talk about that news that just came across about a theme cruise that you're going to be involved with.
Yes. So I recently accepted an invitation to be a guest author on board the Lovelit Cruise, which is a themed cruise for romance readers. It's sailing next year, the end of February, and there's not a whole lot of full details about it yet, but I will indeed be a guest author on board. They just this past February had their first sailing of the Lovelit Cruise, and I heard it went very well.
Do you know any? Are you aware of any of the other authors who are going to be on, or it's too early to have those kind of details?
I don't know exactly just yet. That announcement's going to come next week, but I do know a few of the authors that I believe will be on board.
Well, I suspect among my listenership, I know that there is a very, very passionate following of romance novels. Listeners, say it again, JD. The name of the theme cruise and what's the cruise line and the date?
So it is the Lovelit Cruise. It is spelled Lovelit. It's one word. By the time this episode airs with you, there should be a lot more details on their website, lovelitcruise.com. I know it's going to be on Virgin Voyages, the Scarlet Lady, next February. I believe it's February 27th is the date, but I could be off by a day or two there. But we're going to Grand Turk and Bimini.
Man, I am so excited for you. I just think that is a wonderful opportunity. You are going to sell a lot of books. Are they allowing you? Are you able to bring books with you, or is it too early for those kind of details?
So for this past, or the one that had just sailed this past February, what they did was they had the readers and guests on board pre-order books from the attending authors.
Oh, okay.
And then they partnered with a small or a romance bookstore in South Florida to actually order all those books for the passengers, and then they were delivered on once they got on board.
Okay.
So that it saved the authors from having to, bring hundreds of books on their own or anything like that.
Let's talk about the future, JD. You mentioned that
Yes.
you had a couple of cruises coming up. What are they?
So currently we have so our next cruise is going to be over Thanksgiving this year, and it is actually going to be on Virgin Voyages. We're going on their brand new Brilliant Lady ship, and we're taking our kids for the first time on Virgin Voyages because it'll be shortly after my youngest turns 18. So,
okay.
So that's going to be exciting.
Because when I hear kids in the same sentence as Virgin Voyages, I pause for a second, but then you call them kids, but to Virgin Voyages, they're sailors.
Yes. They will, even when they're in their 20s and 30s, they'll still be my kids.
Yep.
But yes, they'll be old enough to enjoy Virgin Voyages, so we're going to take them on board and let them experience that cruise line. And then we also have I had mentioned the Lovelit cruise next February, and then we have another Carnival cruise later in 2026 that's visiting Celebration Key, their new private island.
Very nice. Do you have a cruise bucket list?
Yes, I do have a cruise bucket list. I would have to say the Mediterranean's probably at the top of that list. And I know my mom's listening to this, so I want to call her out because during my first deployment, she and my entire family went on a Mediterranean cruise without me. And if they would have waited just 2 weeks, I could have met up with them in Spain and sailed with them. But, that's neither here or there anymore. But I am calling you out, Mom. I'm still bitter about it. But I also, I'd love to experience pretty much anywhere that I could get. Alaska, Asia, South Pacific are all within my on my bucket list for eventualities. And of course, myself being a writer and incorporating cruises into my stories. Every cruise that I go on, anywhere new that I visit or new itinerary that I go on, it can provide even more inspiration for upcoming novels as well. So I hope to do that.
Before we let you go, JD, we like to close a conversation with some light and dare I say fun cruise questions. Let's learn a little bit more about some non-writing details about JD. So first of all, how do you spend your me time?
Me time, what's that? No,
I get that response quite often.
yes. No, when I'm not working, I have a day job in addition to my writing stuff. So, my me time is a little bit limited, but, I do like to relax with the kids. I like to cook, whether in the kitchen or out on the grill, hang out in the pool, taking the dogs for a walk. I also try to, keep my creative juices flowing, whether it's through art projects or photography or anything like that. I'm always trying to kind of keep the creative juices flowing.
Are you a good cook or master of the grill or any of that?
I like to think so. I'm no Gordon Ramsay master chef quality, but I enjoy cooking. I've been doing it for a long time, and it gives me it kind of gives me the same satisfaction I have with creating an art piece or writing my books. It gives me that sense of accomplishment when I'm doing it, but on a much quicker scale because I'm not spending 6 months cooking a steak, obviously.
Do you have a signature dish?
Um, I wouldn't say signature dish, but one of my favorite things to cook as of recently is pizza out on the pellet
Oh
grill.
wow. I'll bet that's good. I've seen those, various photos. Some pretty elaborate, and but I've never tasted, pizza, cooked by, done that way. That
Right.
sounds interesting. While we're on the subject of food, let me ask my second question. What's your favorite cruise drink and cruise food?
So my go-to cruise drink would actually be a spicy margarita. Um, and I kind of with Carnival, their guys barbecue restaurant does a really good spicy margarita. Sometimes it can have a little bit more kick than what you're ready for, but it's always good. They don't use any like pre-mixers there. So that's one of my go-to drinks. I'll also have other cocktails, martinis, some frozen slushy drinks, pina coladas and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
When it's comes to food, key lime pie is absolutely my number one cruise food. And I will get key lime pie on every single cruise. And if a cruise line were to mess it up, I will indeed hold it against that cruise line. I will hold a grudge.
Well, if you've the next time you're on Royal Caribbean, if you haven't tried it already, try the key lime pie and chops.
I will put that on my list.
Yeah, I love key lime pie, especially, living in Florida for 9 years. And the one that they have, now it's been probably a couple of years since I've sailed on Royal, but if they haven't changed their menu, the one they have in Chops is, to me, unlike any key lime pie, that I've had before. I love it. So.
Absolutely.
Okay, next question. What's your most memorable or funniest or even most embarrassing cruise or port experience?
Oh boy. So I'm gonna have to go with the cruise that I met my wife on, that singles cruise. It was in St. Martin. I think it was the last port stop that we were at. Uh, there was a group of about 50 of us that went in on booking our own private party bus tour for the island. Everything was going great. We got on board, or we took a group photo before we got on the bus. They started pouring us some bottomless rum punch. As several we've been on several excursions through the years that often give you free rum punch and whatnot. But before we were even 10 minutes onto the road towards our first stop on that tour, the bus driver realized what type of group he was uh, taking around the island that day, and we had to make an emergency stop at the liquor store to make sure we did not run out of drinks that day. But that was a really fun tour. At one point, there was some video captured of me on a stripper pole on that bus. I'm hoping that footage has been lost to time at this point. Although if somebody's listening to this, they'll probably pull it up and share it out there. And then to this day, we took a photo before the bus or before the tour started, and we took a photo after. To this day, I have zero recollection of taking that after photo. However, I was in the photo, but I couldn't tell you anything, and somehow we all made it back on the ship. The initial parts were it got a little bit less or a little fuzzy later the day went, but it was a lot of fun.
Well, that's pretty memorable, or at least the parts you can remember. Okay, so, the last question, but let me preface by saying, welcome to JD's friends and fans and mom listening. Hi, Mom. We hope you have enjoyed what you have heard at the Joy of Cruising podcast, and we'll come back to listen to other episodes and follow us on Instagram or join our Facebook group. So, JD, so that your fans and friends can learn just a little bit more about you, share one thing that my listeners and your friends and fans don't know about JD.
Oh, I try to be a bit of an open book, and I share a whole lot about myself. But one thing that I will say about JD is I am an art connoisseur. I love art in all its forms, culinary art, paintings, performance art, literature, music, dance, you name it. If it's artistic, I love it. And even beyond that, I'm really fascinated with the creative process that goes into so many works, and the ability for somebody to take a raw canvas, whether that's sheet music or a pan or a plate, and turn it into something just beautiful, is amazing. My wife would actually say that I'm a bit of an addict to the art auctions that you can find on board cruise ships, or at least on many of the cruises. I myself wouldn't call it a problem, but we've definitely had to find some wall space on occasion after coming home from a cruise.
Yeah, I bought a piece of artwork on a cruise ship, and it was an original, and the artist, it reminded me of something Picasso would do if he were alive, and so I had to have it, and I love it. I see it every day, and your wife might call you. I don't know if you said it was your wife, but you might be considered a bit of an addict. I say, given your writing and just your appreciation of art and aesthetics in general, I'd say you're a romantic, and that just extends to your appreciation of art.
Absolutely.
Yep. So, JD, it was wonderful to chat with you. Thank you for coming on the Joy of Cruising podcast. Best of luck with the books. Maybe after the romance cruise that you're going to speak on, maybe we'll have you back. I've already said how much I love theme cruising, and also, by that time you'll have good returns, good feedback on how the first couple of books have done, and you'll probably be on the second couple of books. So we'll have a lot to chat about, early 26. And also, Also, if I get you on the cruise is in February, you said, right? 26th?
Yes.
And it's on Brilliant Lady.
It's on Brilliant Lady, correct.
Yeah, good.
Or no,
good.
no, sorry. Our cruise in November this year is on Brilliant Lady. The Lovelet cruise is on Scarlet Lady.
Okay. Well, even still, I go on Brilliant Lady in March. So I'm going to want to know, I've been on Scarlet Lady. So I'm going to want to know all of the details on what's new with Brilliant Lady. So I have that much more reason to have you back. So pencil it in sometime after the romance cruise. We're going to have you back, JD.
All right. That sounds great. And I'm hoping to have my next pair of books released later this year. So if we're looking at March next year, hopefully I'll be close to numbers 5 and 6 by that point.
Good. All the best. And as I like to say, we'll see you on the ocean.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted, each $16.99 plus shipping, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again for $18.99 can be ordered at the link on thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. The Joy of Cruising books are also available at Amazon. Order the ebook at Amazon or your favorite online retailer. Stay in touch by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or following the Joy of Cruising Podcast on Instagram. We're constantly adding new shows. Please leave a review and tell a friend about us. We hope you enjoyed this brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.